The most precious asset of our society is being wasted. Not coal, oil or natural gas, but the skill, ingenuity, energy, enthusiasm and creativity of 1.6 million people who are out of work in this country.
I want to make the point throughout this debate is that the corporate plan's not opposed to the use of high technology, but what we're opposed to is the misuse of technology. Now, I don't believe that people want to spend resources on a project such as Concorde when you've got old people dying of hypothermia for want of simple heating systems, when we've got thousands of electricians in the dole queue, and there we're wasting a very valuable human resource.
What's the point in fighting just to produce the things nobody wants? And I have to point out that in fact that is exactly what the corporate plan isn't about. It's about an alternative products, so that if people don't want the products you want, whether they're aircraft or whatever, in fact we offer an alternative, that we're not sitting in wanting to build ships that nobody wants or aircraft that nobody wants.
Faced with widespread redundancies, the Lucas Aerospace Combined Shop Stewards Committee has proposed a positive solution. The Combined Committee was formed to unite the 13 staff and manual work unions at all 17 sites of Lucas Aerospace. We spoke to a group of shop stewards from Lucas Aerospace Burnley.
And it's my view that had we not started when we did as a combine, or we knew little of the path we were going on, except it was defensive jobs. That's the only path we formed the combine on, because of technology, because of defence cuts, that we knew that ultimately we would finish out of a job. And it was to prepare for this that we really formed the combine. But the unique thing about the combine, its staff are hourly paid.
Lucas Aerospace is Europe's largest designer and manufacturer of aircraft systems and equipment. Approximately 50% of its contracts are defence related. Most of the workforce are highly skilled technicians and engineers. Between 1970 and 1974, the company reduced the number of employees from 18,000 to 12,000. During this period, there were a series of unsuccessful struggles to maintain jobs. Morale was declining as the Lucas Aerospace workers fought to protect a range of products, such as military equipment, which society seemed not to want. The Upper Clyde shipbuilders had also engaged in an important, courageous action which was a rallying point for the industrial workers, but did not succeed in saving their jobs. The corporate plan was initially seen as an extension of the concept to the right to work. In 1974, the Lucas Aerospace Combined Shop Stewards Committee began work on the corporate plan in order to propose an alternative to redundancies. Their intention was to focus on the relationship between the skills of the Lucas workforce and the needs of society.
We sent out questionnaires to trade union leaders, academics, politicians, the sort of people that make speeches in these seaside conference halls, and out of about 180 letters we got 3 replies. So we did what we should have done in the first place, and we sent a questionnaire around to each site of Lucas Aerospace, each of the 13 sites, and it was designed in such a way to make the workers in the plants deliberately more conscious of the skills and facilities on site. From that we got 150 product suggestions, and we kind of sorted them into 12 product areas. Some that would require a long-term research and development programme, some that could be made virtually straight away, some that would be of use in metropolitan Britain, and some that would be of use abroad, some that would be commercially profitable in the orthodox sense, and some which would require government support.
Response to the questionnaire provided a complete audit of the Lucas facilities and capabilities. There were 150 proposals for products. These proposals were backed up with the technical specification for their manufacture. All the work to research the products and bring them to a development stage was done by the workers in their spare time, which ran into thousands of hours. The products were in the areas of oceanics, transport, braking systems, medical technology, computer components and heating systems. Several of these products can now be seen in various stages of development.
I think it's fairly well known that 3,000 people each year die for want of a kidney machine. And that's when, in a situation when we've got 1.5 million people unemployed who are being paid not to make kidney machines. Now, we had 350 people surplus to requirements not so long ago in Burnley. We asked the management if they'd be willing to make a joint venture to the government to provide finance to manufacture kidney machines and save 3,000 lives per year. We wanted to use our skills and facilities for something which we considered to be very socially useful. And what's more socially useful than saving people's lives? And the only response of this particular highly responsible paternalistic British firm was that they didn't want to know, and in fact they spent half an hour saying that we were in the wrong meeting to discuss bringing in work into the factory to save 350 jobs and to save 3,000 lives per year. So I think the hybrid power pack is a good example of how we can use technology to solve human problems rather than create them. In big cities at the moment, we suffer from carbon monoxide pollution produced by a normal internal combustion engine, overcrowding, high fuel consumption and the rest of it. In a normal car engine, most of the fuel is used in accelerating, decelerating, starting, stopping, changing gear. The car engine is about 4 times bigger than it need be just to produce the acceleration that people like to have. With the hybrid power pack, we have a small, perhaps 400 or 500 cc engine charging a generator. That in turn is connected to a battery stack, and then the drive is by electric motor. By using the best characteristics of both the electric motor and the internal combustion engine, we can achieve a reduction in fuel consumption of 50%, which has been verified, a reduction in toxic emissions of 80%, and that's due to the fact that the internal combustion engine operates at constant speed. And also it will be very silent, as it's very easy to silence one frequency of sound which the internal combustion engine produces. So we'd have something that makes a contribution to energy saving, cheap to run, non-polluting, very silent. So far Lucas have refused to do this, being firmly locked in to the battery-only type of electric vehicle. We've told them consistently they've backed the wrong horse. General Motors have now beaten them, have a hybrid. Toyota, Volkswagen and Bosch. And we just found out a fortnight ago that Lucas have been working on a hybrid for the last 9 months, but only 9 months. We suggested this 2.5 years ago, and they've kept it secret so that we can't say, I told you so, which is what we're saying now. Yeah, one of the problems that we've experienced in our high technology industry is that high technology and automation is being used to replace human intelligence by machine intelligence. We're very keen on the concept of teleshoric devices because it blends high technology with a relatively labour-intensive form of work. And in a teleshoric device, it's basically an electromechanical extension to the human body, so that if you were to use a teleshoric device for firefighting, for repairing North Sea oil rigs, for coal mining, the individual will remain in control of the teleshoric device all the time. So he would retain his job, he would retain his skill, he would be able to use it, and he would obtain his normal job satisfaction. You see quite a lot of frantic efforts being made to develop robots. Now, anyone that's done any computer programming will realise it's a very complex task to get a robot to recognise a hexagon nut, select a spanner and fit it on the nut. In fact, the most complicated robots we've got only have 1,000 units of intelligence, whereas the human brain has 100 million units of intelligence. And yet we have frantic efforts being made to perfect robotic devices, whilst we've got 1.5 million human beings in the dole queue with infinitely greater intelligence being paid to do nothing.
When we look at the incidents in the North Sea, for instance, when submersibles are being trapped where the telespheric device, you know, would not put any danger or any human life in danger, and this sort of problem, this sort of cost, for instance, to mount a rescue exercise is one of the things that we should count in when we talk of do we keep people on the door or do we get them working on this sort of technological project. The other thing, of course, the other project that we hold dear to the heart of the Combine, of course, is the road rail vehicle. This again is a novel form of transport. It has been tried over the years where a vehicle will run on the road and will run on a rail track. It's been tried in France. Michelin in France tried it many years ago, but never very successfully. It was never felt that there was the need, the economic need to provide this sort of thing. But when we look at what it does, and through the North East London Polytechnic, there has been trials, there has been models made, there has been tests done with them, very successful tests. And when we look at, for instance, the cost of the Chinese venture in Tanzania, which I think costs something in the region of £1 million a track mile, this sort of vehicle using rubber tyres instead of steel tyres enables it to mount gradients of a far greater nature than a conventional rail vehicle will. Means then that the track mile cost comes down to something in the region of £60,000 and £70,000. Now, talking in pure commercial terms, there is an obvious advantage. And in fact, now that this concept's been floated and the tests have been done, and the concept has been really proved, people such as the Tanzanian Embassy in London are very interested in seeing what the Lucas Combine have got in this sort of these sort of ideas, and the North East London Polytechnic. I think this is important to realise that it isn't just pipe dreams. They're not things that are just on pieces of paper.
One project that we're quite involved in Burnley is the heat pump, which basically works on the same principle as a refrigerator, only on a grander scale. And the project that we're involved in uses a heat pump run by natural gas, and it would cut, on our initial calculations, a gas central heating bill by a half, or up to 2/3 if we're successful with it. It's in an advanced stage, it's going out for test. All the technical indications say it look okay. There's a world market of £1,000 million predicted by 1985. Everything looks very good, but yet for some reason Lucas management refused to take it seriously.
The plan was presented to Lucas management and to the public in January 1976. Only one volume of the 6 volumes of the corporate plan was presented so that the company could not just draw off the money spinners and ignore many of the socially useful products that had been researched. Lucas Aerospace management rejected the plan on the grounds that the existing product range was the best guarantee of future employment, and said that these products did have social utility. Since then, numerous attempts to sack workers have proven their reasoning false.
We've got to put the management's position into context in the whole debate. We did present the corporate plan centred to management. We thought that that's where we should start because we wanted an overall view. The management's response to that central meeting was to reply in a written form to say that our futures lay more in the aircraft industry, in the type of work that we did now, which seems rather an unusual statement, bearing in mind the fact that we've come down from 18,000 to 12,000 as at present.
And Lucas have changed their arguments against the corporate plan as it suits them. They tried to attack it in their reply, which was published and given to the Combine Committee, on technical grounds to start off with. Then they realised that the people who had drawn up the corporate plan represented the whole workforce, including the technical staff. So they could no longer fault it on its technical ability.
And a meeting that we had with them only last week on a committee that we call the New Products Committee that comprises of trade unionist and management, based on a very unusual statement again by the new managing director of Lucas Aerospace, was that the company didn't intend to diversify the product ranges and into things like heat pumps. although they had financed this joint venture with the Open University. So we're still very suspicious of the motives in actually manufacturing the heat pump, bearing in mind that the market survey that was done by a company who's well versed in market research predicted a market of £1,000 million in present day terms.
They always tell us that British industry is about, we should make it profitable, about making profit. And here's the trade unions, who are usually portrayed as being very destructive, always out on strike. We've been accused of propping up capitalism. In our technical judgment, the heat pump is just one of the many products that we've got which we consider to be a winner in normal commercial terms.
There is a continuous debate amongst the shop stewards as to how many of these profitable products they should exchange with the company for the production of socially useful ones. They have no intention of giving all these creative ideas to the company on the free. At many of the sites, they are trying to insist that for every potentially profitable idea they give to management, they demand in a collective bargaining framework that the company take on a socially useful one, such as a kidney machine. This policy is completely in keeping with the notion of an unlimited extension of collective bargaining as one step on the road to real industrial democracy.
The same thought and outlook as us. It's a quick grab, but what's astounded us, where there's a quick grab of 1,000 million till 1985, they just don't want to know anything about it. It seems capitalism's gone mad.
We have talked about products which in the conventional sense will be very, very profitable. But here we have a firm whose aim and intention, as they say, is to make a profit, is to make sure that the shareholders are happy with the performance. It would appear that the company would even be willing to lose money rather than get involved with the workforce, especially a workforce that wants to determine its own destiny. I mean, this is the dilemma that they face with.
There are two examples of the corporate plan in action, the concepts of the corporate plan in action, that I think are very important to mention. One was at Marston Green. Marston Green in Birmingham is dependent upon electronics, and it was heavily involved with the development of the main engine control system using microprocessors for the MRCA. Rolls-Royce took that work back in-house, and Lucas gave the 90 days notice required under the Employment Protection Act for the sacking of about 200 senior staff at Marston Green. The lads drew up a mini corporate plan, putting down all sorts of alternatives that they could work on, including microprocessors. They mounted a campaign. They weren't going to be sacked, they weren't going down the road, they got the MPs involved and made a fuss of it. And they transformed the recruiting situation, they transformed a redundancy situation into a recruiting situation, and now Lucas have just opened a new factory at York Road in Birmingham. So that's one area where the corporate plan concept's been successful already. The other was the proposed closure by management of the ball screw division at Hemel Hempstead. Lucas said that there was no longer any market for industrial ball screws, only aerospace ball screws. Again, a mini corporate plan was published, fought on in the House of Commons and in the factory, and the MPs revealed that there was a tremendous market for industrial ball screws, and Lucas once again would prove wrong, and the Hemel Hempstead ball screw division is still in business making ball screws. So that's another example where a mini corporate plan concept has already saved another closure of another new factory.
The corporate plan gives a new dimension to the campaign against unemployment. Many of the innovations resulted from an understanding of the weaknesses of previous tactics.
1. John Davis, the Secretary of State for Trade and Industry, had announced that just 3 years after it had been created, Upper Clyde Shipbuilders was to be put in the hands of the liquidator. There was to be no more financial help from the government. The announcement was directly in line with the Tory government's tough policies of non-intervention in industry, and UCS was to become known as one of its first lame ducks.
You think back a number of years ago, with the finest engineers in the world, the finest shipbuilders in the world. And yet today, we're all here begging for money off the government.
The announcement was made in the House of Commons on July the 29th, and there were angry reactions from the UCS shop stewards.
They have got the fight of their lives in their hands.
Are you going to take over the shipyards?
Look, we're going back tomorrow for meetings of the shop stewards, and there will be meetings of the workers. And this bunch of political hatchet men that are masquerading as a government that can take anti-human and uncivilized decisions of this nature are going to be confronted with a fight that, quite frankly, I don't think any amateur yachtsman has got the imagination to conceive of. He's going to have that fight.
That if there's any contraction or redundancies in this industry, we will work in, not occupy the yards, because that's the word the press has been using. We're not a foreign power. We were born in that area, and we will work in the right to work. It's our birthright, and we won't give it up for any hatchet men, as my colleague has said.
Yeah, the Upper Clyde work-in was a watershed at the time in British trade union struggle. Probably the Italian workers would claim the credit for inventing the work-in, but it hasn't solved any long-term problems in British shipbuilding. And while we can applaud the determination of the workers to resist a whole community being smashed and the industry being butchered,
the corporate plan has attracted responses from trade unions and citizens groups throughout the world. Other groups of workers have begun to develop similar proposals.
Vickers does have quite a concentration on armaments, but they also find it profitable now to heal as well as wound, because one of the big expanding divisions is the medical division. But what we've done in the Shop Stewards Combine Committee is to, begin to think about the things we're making, and also what kind of security of employment that these products offer us. So what we have done, briefly, is to look at two defence products, and I don't suppose it's any secret to tell you that these are the through-deck cruiser, which is being made at the Barrow Works, and the battle tank, which Vickers ought to be involved in. And we've costed, or we're in the process of costing, we haven't reached the stage of Vickers that Mike and Ernie's lads have reached in Lucas. We are costing these two projects to see what's involved in terms of men, materials, machines and money, and seeing what those resources could be devoted to, on the basis, of course, that British industry is undercapitalised, that we don't have the capital plant which our competitors have. And, we find it ironic that we are spending money on keeping troops and equipment in Germany at the same time we've got to the Germans for help when we have an economic crisis here.
This wide-ranging interest and enthusiasm for the ideas in the Lucas Corporate Plan indicates that workers in most industries feel increasingly threatened by the tendency towards capital-intensive technology. It has not been the experience of most industrial workers that highly sophisticated technology makes a job more interesting. Too often it makes the job evaporate, and at best requires almost nothing for the way of creativity. The promise of increased leisure that is supposed to accompany advance in technology is an empty promise. It actually means the indignity and financial sacrifice of unemployment. It is now generally accepted amongst economists that in advanced economies such as ours, the production needed to maintain and gradually improve the standard of living will be achieved in the future with less and less labour. While there will be obviously ups and downs in this process, advancing technology makes it inevitable that many of the present jobs in industry will disappear over the next few decades. Without fundamental changes, so-called structural unemployment will be a permanent and growing feature of industry. Structural unemployment is a double-edged sword. It cuts deeply into the dignity of the individual as well as into the society's wallet. The individual worker is denied the right to make a contribution to society, and society loses a product or service of each person who is unemployed. For absolutely nothing, taxpayers must pay vast sums of money in social security and bureaucracies. When the cost of administration and bureaucracy is added to the amount of dole payment, the government is paying an average of £70 per week per person. This means that people are being paid almost a normal wage not to make kidney machines or better transport systems. In the light of this, the Combine Committee has created Mark II of the corporate plan. Mark II will include in-depth analysis of the economic and social aspects of the most important products and the building of prototypes.
Well, one of the first things that we are attempting to do is to get industrial workers linked up with the academics. The thing that we're doing now under the auspices of the Rain Trees Trust with the Lucas Aerospace Combined Shop Stewards Committee and the North East London Polytechnic. We obviously see that we have to spread that out. We are making contacts in Manchester Polytechnic. The lads in Birmingham have actually had talks with people in Birmingham University. We have a situation in Bradford where the stewards in Bradford have talked to the Bradford University. Them are the sort of links that we're trying to firm up.
The Centre for Alternative Industrial Technological Systems has been established at the North East London Polytechnic to help develop, to research and assist in building prototypes for the products which will be featured in Mark II. The Centre is unique in that it is founded and administered jointly by the academics and industrial trade unionists.
Not only do we intend to sort of make the contacts with the academic world, because we think that they have something to put into it, and by the way we feel that they have something to learn from us in practical terms, but we also intend to get more involved in the communities through the town halls. There's a whole host of areas where we have to get together as communities and decide what society itself needs, not what multinational companies like Lucas tell us that we need. Or the other artificial barriers are that for some reason or other we're convinced that if we're workers we're not consumers, and if we are consumers and workers and recognised as such then we're not part of the community, which is a ludicrous sort of statement to make, but nevertheless that's how people tend to think.
We have a workforce that has intelligence, and it has one thing above all things, it's got creative ability. It's a thing that we've never developed. It's a thing that all of us, particularly people who've been confined from an early age to a factory life, who have never had the opportunity to develop their own personal thinking and their own creative ability. And we feel that this sort of idea that we have put forward has taken root in Burnley particularly, where they do realise their own ability and the growing self-confidence of the people once they realise what they can do, that they have created the corporate plan, not a single individual, but they have all been involved in it. And the companies see this as a great threat. The unions themselves see it as a great threat. Parliament sees it as a threat. When people can decide and determine in a logical manner, in a creative manner, not a destructive manner, not a striking manner, not a sitting in manner, but in fact a whole range of things have come out of people who previously wouldn't have realised that they had this sort of ability.